There is a moment in every human life that passes almost unnoticed. A quiet moment, subtle and invisible, when the mind finally pauses after its endless storm of thoughts. Most people miss this moment because they are too busy chasing the next thought, the next worry, the next explanation. But if you look closely at your own experience, you may remember small glimpses of it. Perhaps when you were watching the ocean, or walking alone under the evening sky, or listening to music that touched something deep inside you. For a brief instant, the noise stopped, and in that silence, something within you felt whole again. Many people believe that their thoughts are their greatest strength. The mind plans, analyzes, predicts, and tries to control the uncertain future. It builds stories about who we are and where we are going. But the same mind that tries to guide us often becomes the very thing that traps us. It spins endlessly, turning simple moments into complex problems. It asks questions that lead to more questions, until the heart feels lost inside a maze of thinking. The Persian mystic Jalal ad-Din Muhammad Rumi often pointed toward a simple truth that many people overlook. The mind is a beautiful servant, but a terrible master. When it serves awareness, it becomes a tool of clarity, but when it takes control of your life, it begins to create suffering out of imagination. Overthinking is not merely thinking too much. It is the mind trying to find certainty in a world that was never meant to be completely certain. The mind fears the unknown, so it tries to calculate every possibility. It replays conversations from the past, wondering what should have been said differently. It imagines futures that may never arrive, preparing for dangers that exist only in thought. And in doing so, the mind slowly steals the one place where life truly exists, the present moment. Rumi would say that the mind is like a restless traveler who never stops asking for directions, even when he is already standing at his destination. The traveler walks in circles, studying maps, drawing new routes, doubting every path, while the beauty of the garden around him remains unseen. Think about how often this happens in your own life. You sit quietly for a moment, and suddenly the mind begins its familiar dance. A memory appears, followed by a judgment. A plan appears, followed by a doubt. One thought pulls another like a long chain that seems impossible to break. But here is the secret that most people never discover. Thoughts are not the problem. The problem is believing that every thought deserves your attention. Imagine standing beside a busy road. Hundreds of cars pass by every minute. Some are loud, some are quiet, some move slowly, others rush by. Yet you do not try to stop every car. You simply observe them passing. Thoughts can be seen in the same way. When you stop trying to control every thought, something extraordinary begins to happen. The mind gradually loses its urgency. The thoughts that once felt overwhelming start to appear lighter, almost transparent. They come and go like clouds drifting across the sky. This is the moment when overthinking begins to lose its grip. But the mind does not surrender easily. It has spent years convincing you that your safety depends on constant analysis. It whispers that if you stop thinking, something important will be missed. It tells you that control is necessary, that worrying is responsible, that endless reflection is wisdom. Yet, Rumi would gently laugh at this illusion. He would remind us that the deepest truths in life are never discovered through frantic thinking. They are discovered in stillness. The seed does not grow because it thinks about growing. The flower does not bloom because it analyzes the sunlight. The river does not reach the ocean because it debates every turn of the path. Life unfolds naturally when it is allowed to move without interference. In the same way, clarity begins to appear the moment you stop trying to force it. And this is the paradox that surprises many people. The moment you stop overthinking is not a moment of emptiness. It is a moment of awakening. Beneath the noise of the mind, there is another kind of intelligence quietly waiting. An intelligence that does not argue or calculate, but simply knows. At first, this silence may feel unfamiliar. The mind may rush back with new thoughts, trying to fill the space again. But if you remain patient, If you continue observing rather than chasing every thought, the silence slowly grows deeper. And within that silence, something beautiful begins to reveal itself. Because the silence beneath thought is not empty the way the mind imagines. It is alive, it is spacious, calm, and strangely familiar, as if you have returned to a place you once knew long ago but somehow forgot. Many people fear this silence at first because the mind has trained them to believe that constant thinking is necessary for survival. But when you stay with the quiet long enough, you begin to notice something remarkable. Life continues perfectly well without the endless commentary of the mind. Your breathing continues. Your senses remain open. The world around you becomes clearer, more vivid, more immediate. Colors appear brighter, sounds feel deeper, and even the smallest moments carry a sense of presence that was previously hidden behind layers of thought. This is the space where Rumi often invited his listeners to arrive. Not a place somewhere far away, not a distant spiritual destination, but a quiet awareness that already exists within you. The mind is like a restless guest who constantly speaks, but awareness is the silent host of the entire house. When overthinking dominates your life, the guest begins to believe he owns the house. Thoughts start deciding what is real, what is dangerous, what is valuable, and what must be avoided. And because the mind is always searching for certainty, it keeps producing more thoughts in an attempt to solve life like a puzzle. But life was never meant to be solved. Jalal ad-Din Muhammad Rumi often hinted that the greatest wisdom appears when we stop trying to capture life with the net of thinking. Thoughts can describe the river, but they cannot replace the experience of touching the water. They can explain love, but they cannot contain the feeling of it. In the same way, thinking about life is never the same as living it. Overthinking creates a distance between you and the present moment. Instead of experiencing life directly, the mind builds an interpretation of what is happening. It labels everything, compares everything, judges everything. A simple moment becomes crowded with analysis. You may be speaking with someone, but part of your mind is already worrying about what to say next. You may be walking through a beautiful place, but the mind is busy replaying a conversation from yesterday. You may be sitting quietly, yet the mind is already imagining problems that belong to tomorrow. And so, the present moment, which is the only place where life truly unfolds, slips quietly past unnoticed. Rumi understood this deeply. He spoke about presence not as an effort, but as a returning to the simple awareness that exists before thoughts begin their endless storytelling. When you rest in that awareness, something shifts within you. The mind still produces thoughts, but they no longer dominate the entire landscape of your experience. You begin to see them the way you might see birds flying across the sky. They appear for a moment, move through your attention, and then disappear again into the distance. Some thoughts are useful, just as some birds are beautiful to watch. But you no longer feel the need to chase every one of them. This is where overthinking begins to dissolve. Not because the mind has been defeated, but because it has finally been placed in its proper role. The mind becomes a tool rather than a master. You can use it when necessary and let it rest when it is no longer needed. And in this new relationship with thought, something unexpected begins to grow within you, a quiet trust in life itself. Because once the mind stops trying to control every outcome, you begin to notice that life has its own intelligence. Decisions sometimes arise naturally without endless debate. The right words appear in conversations without rehearsing them in advance. Actions feel simpler, clearer, more direct. It is almost as if life moves more gracefully when the mind stops interfering with every step. This is why Rumi often spoke of surrender, not as weakness, but as wisdom. Surrender means allowing the deeper current of life to guide you, instead of constantly resisting it with anxious thought. And when this understanding begins to settle into the heart, another realization slowly appears. One that transforms the way you see your mind, your fears, and even your identity itself. And this realization begins to change something very subtle but very powerful within you. You start to see that the mind was never truly the problem. The problem was the belief that you were the mind itself. For most of your life, every thought that appeared was treated as if it were your identity. If the mind said, "You are not good enough," it felt like truth. If the mind said, "Something terrible might happen," it felt like reality. But when you begin to observe your thoughts instead of automatically believing them, a quiet distance appears between you and the voice of the mind. That distance is freedom. From this place of awareness, thoughts lose much of their authority. They still arise, just as clouds still move through the sky, but they no longer define the entire horizon of your experience. You begin to notice that behind the endless movement of thinking, there is something that has always remained still. Rumi spoke often about this deeper presence within us. He described it not as something we must create, but something we must remember. Beneath every thought, beneath every fear, beneath every story the mind tells about who you are, there is a quiet awareness that has been watching your entire life unfold. This awareness was present when you were a child, before the mind became so busy with questions and expectations. It was present during your moments of joy, during your moments of confusion, and even during the times when the mind felt completely overwhelmed. It has always been there, patiently observing the movement of your thoughts without becoming trapped inside them. When you begin to rest in that awareness, overthinking starts to lose its power in a very natural way. You realize that thoughts are simply movements in the mind, not commands that must be obeyed. Some thoughts are useful, just as tools are useful when building something. But tools are meant to be picked up when needed and set down when the work is done. The mind, however, has learned the habit of never putting the tools down. It keeps building and rebuilding the same structures of worry, doubt, and prediction, even when there is nothing left to construct. And so, the moment you stop overthinking is not the moment the mind disappears. It is the moment you remember that you are the one holding the tools. Jalal ad-Din Muhammad Rumi would often point toward the beauty that appears when this remembering takes place. Life begins to feel lighter. Decisions become clearer. The heart opens more easily to the present moment because it is no longer buried under endless layers of analysis. You start to notice simple things again. The warmth of sunlight, the rhythm of your breath, the quiet feeling of being alive without needing to explain it. These small moments, which the busy mind once ignored, begin to feel deeply meaningful. Over time, a new way of living begins to unfold. Instead of constantly asking the mind for permission, you move through life with a deeper sense of trust. You still use your intelligence when necessary, but you are no longer trapped inside it. You begin to experience the world more directly, without filtering every moment through endless thought. And perhaps this is the real meaning behind the moment you stop overthinking. It is not the end of thinking. It is the beginning of truly living. Because when the mind becomes quiet, even for a moment, you finally hear something that was always present beneath the noise. The silent wisdom of your own awareness guiding you gently through life. If this reflection resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel so that our community can continue to grow and explore more wisdom like this together. Your support helps bring these timeless teachings to more people around the world. And if this message brought you a moment of clarity, don't forget to give the video a like and share it with someone who might also need to hear these words today.